I would think that they wouldn't want you around. You would take up all kinds of resources compared to them. I'm over at 6'1", so they don't want me in their realm.
Well, that explains why they didn't nab you when you passed by the fairy circle.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Mondo Freako! I assumed it was F-A-I-R.
Yeah, I saw that when I first came on. I'm like, oh, he's being all fancy and like doing the Gaelic fairy or something.
Yeah, watch out. But yeah, the F-A-E-R-I-E-S fairies. That's the real kind.
And the most famous fairy of all is Tinkerbell, right? Would you say?
I would say that's the exact image that I had in mind until I started doing my research for this episode, yeah.
It's the one everybody knows because it's...
they got the force of Disney behind it, and pretty soon everyone knew about Tinkerbell.
One year, we took my kids when they were smaller down to Disney World, and Tinkerbell launches herself off the top of a building and slides down a zip line towards the castle. I don't know if you're familiar with this phenomenon.
No, we've got land. We go to land out here, not world.
Oh, right. Well, but I don't know if they do that because the castle's different size in Disneyland. So
yeah, the only people shooting through the air our last visit down Disneyland Way was Spider-Man. He was the one that you you look above the structures.
Spider-Man.
You'd see somebody in red and blue pinwheeling across from building
and he's
to building.
A robot.
He is?
Part of that show is a robot.
Oh.
Did you know that?
No, I didn't get that close to him. It was all from a distance.
No,
I think we were standing in line.
He flips around and stuff.
Yeah, anyway, I did see that.
It's a robot. So we went to this dinner, and it was the Tinkerbell dinner or something. I didn't realize that it was a real person, but there was a woman on the roof of the building, and she gets strapped on the zip line, and they throw her off the roof. Me and the kids were standing there looking out. Those fireworks are going off, and then the next thing you know, this woman comes shooting off the roof. That wasn't a robot because she was doing poses and everything. And they were thrilled, but at first I was like, this is shocking. I don't think that I knew that this was going to be a live person that they literally are going to throw off a roof and go down a zip line towards the castle. But it was amazing, I will tell you. And I think fairies in the real world probably are just as amazing, but probably without all the harnesses and zip lines.
Probably not. They do have some interesting attire, but in my reading, I did not see anything about harnesses or zip lines.
Now, do you know of anyone who has seen a fairy? I have not seen a fairy.
I do not know of anyone. I have not seen one myself. And even, unfortunately, I was hoping heading into the episode, as has happened on previous times we've had conversations, and check out in the basement tapes, everybody, if you haven't already. But to this point, I've not noticed anything that might be construed as any kind of fairy encounter.
No, okay.
But I have read up a little bit about it, and I've listened to some folks tell their stories.
I think the fairy thing, again, you do research. I will consider you the researcher. I watched The Wonderful World of Disney on Sunday night, and that's all I've got in my head and heard a few things. But I know someone who has seen a fairy.
Really?
He has told the story. He's recorded the story. And
where was he when this fairy was seen?
He was in his apartment.
Wow.
Yeah.
I've accumulated what I would refer to as a typical fairy encounter, so I'm curious to hear what he experienced.
He lives in New Jersey, which I don't know if that adds to the story or not, but things that happen in New Jersey.
It seems like a hotbed of activity of late.
He was in his apartment. He's a geeky type person. He's probably on his computer or something, sitting in a chair. Anyway, he catches something out of the corner of his eye, and it like shoots off. And so then he looks in that direction while he's occupied. And he's like, he swears he saw something. He reaches down. He picks up what looks like an organic hat,
Were you serious?
Yeah, like it was a leaf or some kind of thing from the yard that is in the shape of like a little hat.
That's pretty cool.
And it's so much in the shape of a hat that it's not like just a leaf on the floor. It was like shaped and crimped and, looked like it was a hat, and it fit on his finger.
That's unreal.
Yeah. And he hadn't been outside, and he's in New Jersey, so it's like a concrete jungle. There's not a lot of nature. Now, he can't describe what he saw because it was so quick and everything, but this little cap. And so he's figuring that he had a fairy encounter inside his apartment.
Are we able to get a picture of this tiny cap that we could post to the episode notes?
I could ask him for one, but I don't know that he still has it or took a picture or not. I think he truly believes that he saw a fairy and he truly found something.
Well, the only thing that seems to overlap what I would consider typical based on what I've come across to date is the clothing made of organic material. That's a common feature of the entities that these folks run across.
Mm-hmm.
Did you want to do the field guide?
Let's do the field guide. Oh, we'll read it in a Welsh accent.
Oh, that's exciting.
Yeah, I don't know what that is, but who's a famous Welshman?
Tom Jones. All right. F. Fairies. Okay, here you go.
In the Irish tradition, fairies are not as one might expect. Small, winged, benevolent creatures. Fairies are said to be descendants of an ancient race of powerful beings, the Tuatha Danann, who were driven underground when humans arrived to populate the earth. Fairies are said to reside in the otherworld, which is accessible through various entry points in the natural landscape. These beings come in all shapes, sizes, and dispositions, and are traditionally viewed with a careful mixture of respect and fear.
Well done, Tom Jones.
That's interesting.
Yeah, right?
I find that incredibly interesting.
Shall we roll into the quiz?
Yeah, let's hit the quiz music.
Quiz.
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 As we've determined, what I will do is I will read the question. If you have an answer that you feel pretty confident about, feel free to answer, and then I will reveal whether you are correct or not. If you need the multiple choice, I am happy to provide it.
Gotcha. I'll have to ask for it.
All right. Which of these is not traditionally considered a type of fairy? I guess I have to read the...
It kind of lends itself to choices the way you phrase that. I will say...
You could answer anything except a fairy, and you'd be right. All right.
Yeah.
All right. Well, forget that preamble about how to work this quiz. In this instance, I will read you the following possibilities. Which of these is not traditionally considered a type of fairy? Leprechaun, banshee, vampire, or pixie?
I would say vampire out of that list.
That is correct.
I think the other ones could be considered fae.
That's exactly right. Leprechauns are part of what they would consider the solitary fairy classification of fairies, and they're known for their craft work and treasure.
Oh, yeah, the pot of gold. Yeah.
Banshees, a female fairy whose name means woman of the fairy mound or woman of death.
They pull a lot out of that word.
They really do. Pixie, known in Cornish folklore as mischievous nature spirits. But yeah, Fury.
Guy Fieri? Hey, welcome to Flavor Town. Guy Fieri.
I think he needs to change his hair. I think it's time.
It's probably a wig at this point.
It could very well be.
Just sticks it on.
But yeah, they say there are hundreds of different types of supernatural beings in Celtic folklore, and these are all considered part of the fairy folk.
The fairy folk.
All right, moving on to our friend, the leprechaun. What occupation is traditionally associated with him?
Cobbler, I think. He's a shoe repair guy, isn't he?
That is correct. He is a shoemaker.
A shoemaker. There you go.
Yep. They make and repair shoes for other fairies, vital to fairy society because dancing is so important to the fae. Now, this is a phrase that I love. They're said to need new shoes constantly, these fairies, due to dancing their old ones to pieces. Wow. Dance your shoes to pieces. Have you ever danced your shoes to pieces?
Once.
Did you really?
And it was because I got a large piece of glass that came all the way through into my foot.
Oh, wow.
That was at a bar.
You danced them to their demise.
Yeah, almost to my own demise, probably. It was in college, and they had a new drink called a shark bite. They were $1 a piece. And we were really drunk, and we were dancing. The next thing I know, I got a stabbing pain, and I had to take my shoes off. And they were damaged severely because somebody broke a mug.
No leprechaun on staff to help you out.
Yeah, I wish. There probably was leprechauns later in the evening because, I mean, we really overdid it. It was a sloppy night.
Okay, question 3. The Banshee's famous cry is traditionally understood to do what?
Scare the bejesus out of you.
That's your answer, or would you like to... Let's put it this way. That's not the answer.
Maybe I need to have some choices.
Okay. Is it understood to cause death, predict death, ward off evil spirits, or remind people of Nancy Kerrigan after a knee strike?
The Tanya Harding incident, yes. I think it's number 2, which is predict death.
That's exactly right. She's a death messenger for specific Irish families. Do banshees fly? I could swear that banshees...
They do, but I don't think they have wings. I think they just have
packs.
flowing clothing.
Oh, the flowing clothing propels them around.
Right, yeah.
Mondo Freako.
All right. What trait do both traditional fairy encounters and modern alien abduction accounts often share?
A bloody nose and the feeling that something happened you didn't like.
I'm going to give you some choices here.
I better take the choices?
Missing time or memory gaps, bright flashing lights, feelings of paralysis, or all of the above.
Oh, I would say all of the above.
That's correct.
Yeah. I was expecting some kind of smart aleck answer on that one, but okay, all of the above.
Well, I had to give you the all of the above in order to make it right. So yeah, the parallels between fairy encounters and alien abduction stories have made some folks suggest that they might be different cultural interpretations of the same phenomena.
That's interesting, yeah.
Going to a different realm, time distortion, and then returning with unclear memories of what happened when you were gone.
Or maybe fairies are aliens that we haven't classified that way.
Maybe.
They've just been here and they're like, we got tired of making shoes and dancing, so let's head out and knock a few people out and, take their temperature.
The field guide has taught us that when humans arrived on the scene, the ancient race then went underground to the other world. And there are plenty of folks who believe that some other non-human intelligences, NHIs, do exist below the surface of the earth.
Like the dwarves and the elves.
And this is something interesting that I can touch on later if you feel like it. I asked my researchers to go out and sort of look at what kind of parallel experiences they have across different cultures, the relationship to nature and the earth and these different types of beings. And I guess dwarves are essentially the German version of some of the fairy folks, and the Pixies are from England. Actually, the Pixies, the band, were from the U.S.
But Frank Black or
Frank
Black Francis or whatever, yeah.
Frank Black, yeah. But before we start going down too many side roads, let's wrap up this quiz, shall we?
Oh, sure. Okay.
What natural feature is most commonly associated with fairy activity? Mushroom rings?
Oh, now you're not going to let me say something. You're going to just go right in the list. I'm tired of your answers.
Yeah, as the author of these quizzes, I should have a much better handle on how they're administered.
Go ahead.
right.
So mushrooms. What?
Mushroom rings.
Cybosilic mushrooms.
They don't specify the type here in the
Okay.
possible answer. Waterfalls, dead trees,
That's scrubs.
or murder hornets.
Chasing waterfalls. Or what was the last one?
Murder hornets.
Oh, murder. Yeah. That's just one of those goofy ones you made up. I would say mushrooms.
Yeah, also known as fairy rings.
Yeah,
Natural
fairy
formations that are said to be where fairies dance.
Have you seen a fairy ring in real life? Like been out and looking around?
You know, I've seen a fairy line. We have an old tree root in our front yard.
I think that's a Scorsese movie.
The fairy line.
The fairy line.
But no, to answer your question succinctly, I have not.
No, it is a wild thing. You're just walking in the woods and you're like, holy moly, there's like a circle.
You've seen a circle of mushrooms.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Is that where you danced your shoes to pieces?
Yeah, no, I was in a bar.
Okay.
No, I didn't dance. But if you're hunting for mushrooms, then you see some of these things. So I've been mushroom hunting over the years several times. So
Do not step inside them, as you may be forced to dance with the fairies until you collapse.
yeah.
Yeah, so keep that in
That
mind.
would be a pretty quick dance. I'd collapse right away.
You're quick to collapse.
Yeah, I'd be like, oh, it's too much.
All right. This is the last one. I will stop pestering you with these questions after this one.
Okay.
Which offering is traditionally considered dangerous to accept from the Fae?
Oh, now you're going to pause.
I almost read it, but I stopped myself.
I was going to say cigarettes, but I think I might need a list.
I think that's probably true, but it's not on my list.
Oh, okay.
Gold, food or drink, clothing, I'll assume probably tiny clothing,
Yeah.
or investment advice.
I think I'm going to guess gold.
No.
Really?
Yeah.
So then it's probably food then.
Food or drink is correct. Consuming
Yeah,
fairy
okay.
food has the potential of trapping you in their realm.
There's a lot of that, isn't there? I mean,
A lot of realm
there's
trappage?
a couple of realm trapping. I would think that they wouldn't want you around.
That is a
You'd
good question. What do they want with us?
You would take up all kinds of resources compared to them. You're like huge compared to the Fae. And
Not all of them. Some of them are full size.
well, yeah, they're all at different sizes, I suppose. But my guess is, I'm over 6'1", so they don't want me in their realm.
Well, that explains why they didn't nab you when you passed by the fairy circle.
I mean, like, Bob's taking up an awful lot of real estate around here.
I think they just like screwing with you because it's said that there's a time shift. It's like a day in the fairy world is equivalent to like a year outside of it. So they just like to screw with people.
That could be, yeah, mess you all up.
We drove them underground. They seem to be probably having a good time on the surface of the earth.
Yeah.
Anyway, the taboo against eating fairy food is one of the most consistent elements across fairy folklore.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. It could bind you there forever. I don't think they mean constipate.
I wonder if it's really tasty.
Mondo Freako.
So, do you know one of the famous fairy hoaxes?
Famous fairy hoax.
A very famous fairy hoax. In fact, it fooled a very famous person at the time.
I may have. It's not coming to mind right now.
The Cottingley Fairies.
Mm-hmm.
Does that ring a bell? This is not in your research? This did not come up in your
Did
research?
not run into the Cottingley Fairies.
The Cottingley Fairies. So there's these two young girls, and they went out, got a camera, and this was back before 1920. So having a camera was very much a novelty.
Mm-hmm.
And they said they went out into they were in Cottingley in England, and they said they were out in the forest and they met some fairies. And then I think it was, if I remember the story correctly, I could be wrong on this, so if there's any AI voices that jump in here. So they got this camera and said, well, go take some pictures of the fairies. And so they went out into the woods and they took these pictures of the fairies in the woods with the little girls. And they got it developed, and they're like, oh my gosh, there's fairies in the picture. And it was like a sensation.
Huh.
And they stuck to their story. And even Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, famous author,
Sherlock Holmes,
fell for it. Because the reality was they had gotten some book and cut out the fairies and stuck them in
creative
the
stories.
ground and took basically 19th or early 20th century Photoshop, these fairies into the pictures.
The gas-powered Photoshop.
Yeah. Well, and I think they did like different exposures and made it look funny.
Right.
But yeah, the Cottingley Fairies, and so they fooled people for quite some time, and it was printed in magazines. The pictures were printed in magazines. The fairies are real. Fairies are real.
Well, that's what you posted in the Facebook group. Is that correct?
That's the picture. One of the pictures that I posted is the Cottingley Fairy.
Cottingley Fairies. I thought that was a family photo.
Yeah, that was early on the shark bite night. That was me when I was still innocent.
You were gathered with your posse.
Yeah, and we were hanging out, and everybody gathered around.
And your shoes were still intact. In previous episodes, the Basement Tapes episodes, we've discussed what's the motivation for folks pre-internet to go and do something like this.
That's true. That's true.
Here it sounds like just good old-fashioned 1920s fun.
Well, I don't know that they intentionally, at least initially, were wanting it to go this far.
Oh, I see.
And then it did. And I don't know if their parents didn't help with that or whatever. Who knows? But I don't know that part of the story. But yeah, it's a famous fairy story. But these fairies have wings, and they dance around, and they're little, tiny.
Yeah.
More in the Tinkerbell style.
Definitely.
Cottingley. Sorry, not Cotlington. Did I say
Cottingley?
Cotlington? Cottingley.
Just one additional bit of information regarding the Cottingley Fairy story. In the early 1980s, when the girls admitted to the pictures being a hoax, Frances, the younger of the two, still maintained that the fifth image was legitimate, that it had not been faked like the others.
So would you like to hear about a typical encounter to see how your friends might stack up against?
Oh, yeah, other than my friend, yeah, sure.
I asked for what we consider a modern-day fairy encounter in Ireland. What do people who have had these sightings or claim to have had these sightings, what's it like? They say usually unexpected. That makes a lot of sense. And can be both fascinating and unsettling. Typically human figures of various sizes dressed in vibrant colors. Now, was that tiny hat vibrant in color? Do you know?
I don't recall him mentioning that.
Doesn't sound like it would be.
It was more natural
Malay.
in color, like browns.
Maybe if it was fall and it was one of those shocking red leaves that they made that.
I don't know that I don't think it was Fashion Week in New York that week.
If I were going to make a hat out of leaves, I'd wait till it turned shocking red.
Yeah. You are much more fashionable.
I'm not sure my family would agree. So these sightings and or encounters happen near the traditional fairy locations. We've talked about them, burial mounds, fairy forts, other remote settings, generally described as surreal and otherworldly. See them, the fairies, dancing in circles or simply appearing and disappearing suddenly like your friends. Mm-hmm. Some report a sense of time distortion. Any time distortion reported by your friend in New Jersey?
He didn't report any, but I wouldn't be surprised if he had it, even without the fairy encounter.
They're not always benign. We learned about that from the field guide entry. Some witnesses describe feelings of unease or danger. There have been accounts of attempted abductions, people going missing for short periods of time. Mm-hmm. And as usual, when people see all the interesting stuff, there can be traumatic after effects with people being afraid to tell their stories because of ridicule or whatever, thinking that they're a little bit bonkers. And they mentioned again the similarities to UFO experiences, including, this was really interesting to me, that they have sometimes what they would term as advanced technology or artificially lit interiors of fairy mounds.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So
it's not an LED bulb. It's some type of plasma.
Or something. I listened to one encounter, and this guy, it happened to him, and he said he was, I think, 12 years old. And he said that he was brought into this chamber, and it looked like he was looking through glass at these different scenes. And all of these scenes sort of showcase what he would term as machines. But all of the machines look like they were constructed of pieces of nature.
I think I lost you. Hello? Hello, it's me.
Well, I'm back.
Hey, it's been a year. Where have you been, Rob?
It was the weirdest thing. I saw something out of the corner of my eye.
Yes?
And then a tiny hat was on the floor. The next thing I knew, I realized I'd been disconnected.
Yeah, I just went ahead and made about 100 episodes while you were gone.
And they're probably better for it.
So, anyway, this is Rob. He was here at the beginning, folks. He was part of the...
Why is my beard so long?
He was busy making all kinds of Mad Libs and quizzes, but, we dropped all that since then. And so anyway, that's how Sir Arthur Conan Doyle got fooled by a couple of munchkin children in Cottingley.
Mondo Freako.
I think we should live more like the fairy and just be with nature and have our little mound and have it lit by magic. And
I am with you, but I get cold really easily.
if you can have a magic light, you can have a magic heater. One of the most fascinating things about the Hobbit book is that he lives in a hole in the ground. But if you saw the movie, it's obviously a pretty nice hole.
Yeah, it's a nice hole.
But no, I've always thought it would be fantastic to live in the ground. I only partially accomplished it in my adult life because we do have a walkout basement. But I think that there is a lot of benefits. And I always thought, wouldn't it be great if all things were possible and I wouldn't make my family incredibly angry with me? I would love to live in a hole in the ground.
I watched the video of a gentleman doing just that. He went out in his, I'm assuming it was his property, and he dug a giant rectangular hole, and then he cut down a bunch, well, I'm not sure if he cut down the trees. He had a bunch of trees that he skinned. What do you do? You take the bark off a tree. But anyway, he essentially fashioned a log cabin that was a hole in the ground, right? It had stairs heading down to. It was one of those videos you just watch and say, holy crap, look at that guy actually doing that.
Yeah. Good for him.
Yeah.
I mean, we should do more of that. If you're deep enough in the ground, then the temperature is a little more constant.
Consistent, yep. You just wear like a light sweater, right?
Yeah. You'd be fine. I mean, other than the bugs.
Yeah, he took care of that. He like scorched the outside of the logs, and that was for bug resistance or something like that, yeah.
Cedar logs.
I'm not sure, yeah. Could have been.
That's why there's cedar chests, is because bugs don't eat cedar.
Right, and the cedar blocks, cedar floors in the closet.
Cedar blocks, cedar. Yeah, exactly. See, look at all this.
All this knowledge.
Welcome to the Survivalist Show. I'm going to live with the Fae in a cedar chest in the ground.
Poke an air hole or two.
Well, with the Fae, you don't need the air holes.
You don't need the air holes?
Yeah.
They figured that out.
They fart
already.
Oxygen.
I did not run across that in my research. But
yeah, all you need is like a bunch of refried beans and a couple of fairies and you're set.
Mondo Freako.
So how do we wrap up on fairies? We have an out on this, or are we just going to end it? This is it. Keep your eyes open. Don't step on a fairy.
Yeah.
If you're a cobbler, it will behoove you to make friends with a fairy.
I'm not sure. I got to look at the audience statistics. I don't think cobbler is one of the top professions.
Oh, I would think a cobbler would listen to podcasts all day long. Otherwise, they'll be listening to the damn hammer rapping on heels constantly. Jeez. Actually, we had a cobbler not too far from my parents' house.
Did you?
Yes. It was a little shoe shop, honest to goodness. He had his house, and then he had like a garage that he turned into a shoe shop. And literally, he was a cobbler. He would fix your shoes.
Short guy, red hair, green suit.
I don't even remember what he looked like.
You probably remember that. Smoke a pipe?
Not that I recall.
Pilgrim's cap, a green.
This was, in the early days of high-end tennis shoes.
Mm-hmm.
And he would make your tennis shoes look amazing.
Oh.
So he had to branch out from cobbling and into making idiot children's tennis shoes look nice.
Did he invest in a bedazzler?
It was more like buffing and polishing.
Really?
And
Give him a spritz?
yeah.
Okay.
And like, it was like detailing of tennis shoes.
Did he take a little air freshener from the laces when he was done?
I probably spritzed them, you know.
Yeah. Yeah,
I'm sure he did that, like, you know, at the bowling alley.
Give it the old cobbler spritz.
Yeah. I think Johnny Depp is hawking that now.
Cobbler spritz.
The cobbler spritz. Since my lawsuit, my new fragrance. Darling, you want to smell like a cobbler. Get cobbler spritz.
I like it. I don't know. Maybe there's a Mondo Freako line of fragrances in the works.
Yeah,
right?
cobbler spritz would be right up there, along with.
Or maybe we should do beard oil instead, or both.
Beard oil. I don't know if I want to get into the beard oil end of things.
No, probably not.
Personally, I let you
Cutthroat, I
handle
hear.
that.
Yeah.
I think you can handle the beard oil. I literally cannot grow a beard.
Oh, okay.
Apparently, I've got some fae in me, and I can't grow a beard. I don't know. Do
Fair skin fae?
fae have beards? I don't know.
Well, the leprechauns do, I believe, right?
Yeah, but they're, you know, they're way over one side
Solitary
of
sort.
the fae. Yeah, I'm much more elven
Mm-hmm. Right.
than I am, you know, leprechaun-y.
The elves are Scandinavian, I think.
Yeah, that's a whole other. In Iceland, they change roads for elves. They won't go through certain areas. And trolls.
In fact, they've done that in Ireland as well, I was reading. They've redirected primary roads to not disturb fairy mounts. All right, so fairies, the fae, or fairies with an E.
Mm-hmm. I like them.
You like them? That's the...
I don't know what I would do if I actually saw one. I think I would be kind of freaked out, but I want them to be real.
Oh, yeah, I do too.
I really want to believe my friend saw something and had this experience, because it makes the world all the more interesting.
It does.
And I think they should be real. I think that just like in, if you go back to Tinkerbell, we'll wrap it back around. You have to believe in Tinkerbell for her to function.
Yeah.
Peter Pan, right?
There's a little lesson there.
I believe in fairies.
One of my working theories, I've got a million, is that when the whole Industrial Revolution happened, we just in general, humans over-rotated towards science and fact and things you can measure. So we're missing the magic. We're missing the magic today, and I think that might be the missing ingredient, and we start seeing some glimpses of it, and I don't know a lot about it, but, you know, quantum theory and stuff like that, I think is sort of taking us back into that realm, but in a sort of a scientific path back to what I think might just be a natural essence of existing here, right? That's something that we try to homogenize and rinse out of the day-to-day, because as soon as you start even mentioning this, like if I went in my day job and started telling people, I talked about fairies for an hour last night, they're going to say, oh, good, and then not consider me for the next promotion.
Yeah. I was going to say, they're like, did you do your acronym list? When we were wanting that at 8 o'clock this morning.
Bring back the fairies. No, bring back the magic. That's my slogan today.
Well, that's what we have here. Mondo Freako magic.
Mondo Freako magic.
Hey, you made it. I knew you could do it. Thanks for listening to Mondo Freako. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to subscribe, wherever there's those buttons that say subscribe. You might try it on YouTube as well.
You can connect with us on all major social media platforms. Just look for Mondo Freako Podcast. And make sure you join the Mondo Freako Facebook group.
Our contact information is in the show notes if you'd like to get in touch. I'd be happy to talk to you in my spare time. Want to support the show? Leave us a rating, a review, a thumbs up, a thumbs down, a middle finger. All these things help people find us.
And be sure to check out our Basement Tapes episodes. These are the original conversations that turned into Mondo Freako.
Available wherever you get those podcast thingies.
See you next show.
You freak. I would consider myself the idiot on the street.
Because Lego shoes would be really painful.
The Winkle Man would go around the neighborhood selling winkles.
He's she.